Welcome to the GameSmith's Table Talk. This is a roundtable format discussion where I and my guests try to cover 3 tabletop role-playing related topics in 15 minutes. If you know anything about tabletop role players, then you'll know that this is an ambitious goal. Let's head to the table. Welcome back to our Table Talk podcast. I'm your host, Clayton the GameSmith, and joining me are...
I'm Franklin.
I'm Cheryl.
I'm Clark.
Let's head to the table.
The views and opinions of the panel are their own and do not reflect the views and opinions of any other individual company or organization. This podcast has been known to be opinionated. You have been warned.
And we're back again talking about backstory. Does it matter?
Right, and we just want to talk about the GM's perspective on this whole thing. We've talked a lot about the players and their perspective of it, and that's usually where you find the vast majority of the backstories. We touched on how the GM influences backstories, but what about backstories for the GM? I mean, does it really matter that any of his NPCs have backstory?
Yes.
I'd say it matters based on how much of a factor in the story the NPC is going to be. I've definitely, in pre-written modules, I've read NPCs like Clayton that talked about where they have this huge elaborate backstory for a character that the players are going to fight and kill and never find out any of the history of. In one particularly strange example, there's an NPC in the Skull and Shackles adventure path who they are very, very explicit that there is no way the players could ever find out this character's backstory, which makes me wonder then why did they bother writing all of it out?
That's a fair point.
As a player, I completely agree with that. As a GM, I completely agree with that. As a GM who crafts stories for NPCs that I know are going to be around, that's important. For NPCs that I know you're just going to walk through, I could care less what their backstory is. But for an NPC who's going to be around, hopefully for a long time, that background is going to inform their actions in the present. So their decision-making process as an NPC for the things that they're going to do, particularly if it's somebody that your characters are spending a lot of time with, you're essentially playing another full-blooded character at the table.
Oh, absolutely.
And so their present decisions need to be informed by something other than, he's got a chaotic good alignment.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that's why printed adventures have backstory for certain characters. I mean, usually when you're in a printed adventure and you run across, backstory, this character is important, right? And then you're looking at the surrounding of how your players are going to meet this character and interact with this character, and you're like, they're just going to kill this character.
Yeah.
I know my players, they're not going to talk. You know, this is the bad, so why do they care? They're just going to, straight up murder hobo this guy.
Yeah.
So then you're looking at it, why does this matter? And I think that it matters in as much as with player characters, this informs how this person is. If you know the backstory on anybody, you would go, so that's why that person is doing X. And so I think it's the same for those types of characters. It gives you more of a handle on how to play them in the setting.
Right.
So on the off chance that, your barbarian's like, oh no, let's talk to this person first.
And everybody goes, what?
It does happen.
Yeah.
Because you never know exactly what's going to happen at the game table.
Mm-hmm.
What mood are your players in? What the dice do.
Yes. The dice god.
What happened just before this? Do the players suddenly have a different goal in their mind than I think they will at this point in time? You don't know. So there's always that possibility that they will talk to the villain.
It's also a concept that I've just recently been enjoying is kind of a tiered background where the player characters can easily access most of your background, but there's still a portion of it that is only known to you and your GM. And something that would maybe make a good story hook or something that would come out through interaction or levels later when it's more appropriate.
Then this also works from the GM perspective in revealing tidbits of information slowly over time. So I'm thinking back to one of the adventure paths that Clark and Franklin and I are working on right now, where some new information has just come to light for a character that's important in Clark's character's life. So before there was basically he was just a presence, but now there's a tidbit of information that has come out, and suddenly the wheels on the conspiracy truck are running wildly. And so now there's questions being asked and different avenues of gameplay are being explored and different storylines are being explored that weren't previously thought of because now an NPC's background has been somewhat revealed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just adds layers of intrigue and suspense, and you talk about that deep immersion storytelling, it just adds more layers to your story and more avenues for your player characters and your GM to pursue.
Yeah. I would say as a general rule, the amount of backstory you should have for an NPC is pretty proportional to that NPC's importance in the story. If this is someone, as Clayton talked about, someone who is basically an extra PC, someone who's going to be traveling with the PCs for a long time, someone who they're going to have lots of conversations with, either a long-standing ally or a long-standing enemy of the players, you want to know a lot about this character, about their history, their personality, and as much as you can about how to play them. If this is someone like a shopkeeper that they're going to talk to twice and then move on,
yes,
2 or 3 sentences is probably more than enough in that circumstance.
My advice to GMs is to make sure you always have a notepad nearby, so when something flies out of your mouth and everyone perks up, that you can quickly write that down, because you may have 3 or 4 sentences written about something and go, I'm going left, but then you said something that makes them go right. You're going to want to write that information down because, at least in my terms of my stories, I want that information to become relevant 5, 10, 15 game sessions from now.
Yes, and if you have players that enjoy story, they're more likely the people that remember things, take notes on things. So if, you have this character acting one way and then a couple of sessions later he's acting a totally different way, suddenly your players are thinking, doppelganger? Is he under coercion? And your story goes off the rails, unless of course that is your story.
Yes.
Another thing is, as a GM, take notice of the NPCs that the characters like to interact with more than once.
Yes.
You may have in your mind, this guy over here is going to be the interesting NPC. Backstory on him, the characters are going to love this guy, and why are they talking to the butcher? This is like 3 times they've gone back to the butcher, and all I have on him is butcher. Players will do this. It may just be, once again, the time that they interacted with this person, or it could just be how you played that person. And they're suddenly, really interested in what's going on with the butcher. We had one in our DC campaign again, where our 2 characters, Clayton's and mine, met at a diner. Because this diner was down the road from the newsroom, where my character spends a lot of her time. When she came in as the player, I just offhand said, I'll just have the usual Tommy.
Yes. Suddenly Tommy's a thing now.
And he was. He was a constant through everybody who interacted with that diner.
And just so you know, it's 27 years later, and we still don't know what Tommy's last name is.
No, we don't. But we do know that he does theater, and that he studies philosophy. And so throughout the interactions, we got to know more and more about him, but he's just a background character. He had no real oomph in his life. I mean, the one time, I think it was when Jason, another player of ours, was GMing, and Tommy wasn't at the diner.
Everybody got worried.
It was somebody else. Now everyone was worried about where Tommy was. Did he quit? And we had a 15-minute conversation with this new waiter about where Tommy was. But other than that, we didn't give him another thought. It was only when we were in that location.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of things. As a GM, take note on that. If your characters are interacting with somebody at such a level, keep them in. Start fleshing out his background in bits and pieces. You don't need a 5-page treatise on his entire life, but little things like that. Now, let's talk about how to deal with players' backgrounds.
Just before I jump onto that, I like that topic. Just one other little quick tip that I have as something that's been quite successful for me as a GM. Old PCs that you've retired make really nice, well-fleshed out NPCs in other campaigns. I have an alchemist that I played as a PC years and years and years ago, but I've then has kind of cameoed in other campaigns I've run as the local alchemist. Because I know this character, I know their personality, their mannerisms, their history. It's really easy for me to play that character. Mm-hmm. And I imagine, most people who have been playing for as long as the various people around the table have, we've all got a big folder somewhere of characters that we retired back in the day.
Yeah,
I call
absolutely.
mine the graveyard. It's a folder of my house. It's probably about 2 inches thick at this point.
Also, with permission, other players'
PCs,
characters.
if you ask permission, yes. And that's absolutely necessary.
Because once you start playing with them, they're going to be different.
Yes. Which also kind of leads, as a GM, my mantra is beg, borrow, buy, steal, and share everything you possibly can. Doesn't matter, like, you kids, like, oh, they just ran into, the butcher you just mentioned. Oh, they ran up to the butcher. I have no idea what this butcher's name is. Keep a list of names behind the screen with you. Just make a list go onto a random name generator, make a list of names, and keep 20 or 30 names with you at all times. Just pick some TV trope, pick a character out of a movie you've seen, out of a book you've read, out of a comic book you like, and it's like suddenly this butcher... Yeah, this butcher has the same personality as Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah, I've definitely made characters that were heavily inspired by people I know in real life.
Well, I'd like to say inspired, but, I flat out stole them. This is exactly that person that's been reskinned with a new name. But as a GM, you have to be able to... and it's a thing that I don't want GMs to become discouraged by because it comes with experience, where you can make up NPCs on the fly that become important and memorable, which is why it's good to have that notepad nearby.
Absolutely. As Clayton said, it does come from experience, and the way to get this experience is just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And the more you take note of when your successes hit, the better you'll be at it.
And the more likely are you to be able to repeat them later.
Okay, so as a GM, your players sit down for your first session. Everyone's got a backstory.
Ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Some do, some don't. Franklin doesn't care about his stories. I randomly generated it. Here's my cliff notes. Clark's over here with, a 3-page essay on his character. How do you, as the GM, deal with all that?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking me.
Well, I would say, and just to maybe open up the conversation a little bit more, I tend to approach, kind of like how I talked about the background generator, that the information the background generator gives you is a seed that you use to grow your story from. As a GM, the background that the player gives me is a seed that I use to grow the story further.
Absolutely.
So what they give me is what they know. It's, to their knowledge, 100% true. I'm not going to change anything that they wrote, unless there's a massive clash. Like, this whole story is based around being in this country, and that's not the part of the world we're playing in, then that's a conversation with your player.
Right.
But I use it as, they have this character whose part of their story is a weird guy that lived down the street from them. Let's flesh that out. Is that character part of a cult or a secret organization? Or what's the thing that's actually weird about them?
Right.
I guess more what I'm looking for is, I hand you a backstory, you briefly go through it. Next few adventures aren't going to have anything to do with anybody's backstory because you're setting up the adventure to go. What do you look for as a GM in that person's backstory for seeds later? Do you take a copy of it?
Okay. I'm going to involve Clark in this because this just recently happened. So we're setting up playing Kingmaker again. This was our Kingmaker 4. He makes a character that he's brought from another game, and he wants to play that character that way. So he's open to adapting it to the Pathfinder Galorian setting, changing the influence of whatever gods and whatever story to fit the nation that we're playing in. That's wonderful. Then he comes up with this idea that he's going to be literally frozen in time as a statue, that he has been turned to stone. So that actually became our Kingmaker 4 flashback story. So now we're actually playing another completely separate adventure that is how his character got turned to stone. Mm-hmm. But it takes place 200 years before our Kingmaker 4 story. So his character in the present story just has moments of flashbacks or moments of memory where it's like, I remember vaguely doing this thing back, a long time ago, and because the story hasn't been finished yet. That background story actually was the complete fuel for an adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, allowed me to play the character as an archaic character, almost out of time, by playing it generations prior to present day. So it's a good example how there was a collaboration between my backstory and the GM's campaign that brought this whole campaign to life, so to speak.
This completely separate. So we got Kingmaker, and then we got this Kingmaker flashback that we're playing separately.
Mm-hmm. Almost like a prequel to...
It's not almost. It is a prequel.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's definitely one extreme.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Something I've had some success with. When I'm running stuff, I usually am looking at pre-printed adventures that I then heavily modify to fit the exact group that I'm running with. Something I've found very useful is just making a deliberate effort to look for places where I can take out the character that's in the pre-printed adventure and replace them with someone from one of my character's backstories. That's usually, admittedly, a big draw to it is that it's kind of a low-effort way to integrate people's backstories without causing too much interference with the actual story. The go-to example of this was a player that had a story about their rivalry with this evil wizard, and I'm reading ahead in the pre-printed oh yeah, there's a bit with an evil wizard in it coming up. I'll just put the different evil wizard in and run the story. Similar, they have this whole section of their story, of the main story, that ties heavily into their background.
Agreed. If you're a GM, one of the things to realize is, if your characters hand you a really good background, they put some time into it, it's important to them in some way. So even if you don't do it right away, look for ways to incorporate bits and pieces of their background so that you can help bring it out. A lot of players want the other people at the table to know their character's background, but other than just like, hey, this is my background, you got to give them ways to bring it out.
Have it come out organically in the campaign itself.
So, to finish that thought, as an administrator, look for ways to bring it in. Sometimes you can do whole game sessions, you can do whole adventures based off of one person's background. Obviously, the rest of the players have to buy into that.
Yeah, and you should, I would say as well, if you're going to do that, you should try and find a way to draw the other players in. The player whose backstory you're drawing attention to is the center of the story, but that doesn't mean the other players don't contribute to that story.
Yeah, they're not ignored.
Yep. It's also a really good way if somebody doesn't show up for a session.
Yes.
If you're running a 5-people group and only 2 people show up, it may be time for a flashback. It may be time for a side adventure that has to do with 1 or 2 of their backgrounds.
I think that's a whole nother podcast, Cheryl.
That's a great idea, though. I like that. I really like that.
Okay, I'll look forward to that in the future, I guess. So I think we've talked basically all we can about backstories.
We're done with backstories.
I think so, yeah.
If you want to hear more, let us know. I'm sure we can talk more about it.
Additional topics you want to expand on, or anything you want to add to the conversation?
We look forward to hearing from you.
We'll see you at the table.